Hello students, this is the last part of my chapter 2 biological classification. In this video, I have included the kingdom Plantae, Animalia and viruses. And the kingdom Plantae, Animalia I am not included in this video as it is coming in the detailed chapters is coming following this chapter in the following chapters. So we can move to the slides. Okay. The first is the kingdom Plantae. The kingdom Plantae that includes the multicellular eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms. They are the multicellular organisms and they are the eukaryotic organisms as well as they are the chlorophyll containing organisms are known as plants. And few are partially heterotrophic or parasitic. They are completely means as we know that plants are autotrophic, but some are partially heterotrophic because they do not contain the chlorophyll or they are the like carnivorous plants, and they are some are parasitic. And example for the heterotrophic are such as insectivorous plants, those that ingest the insects, that is insectivorous plants such as bladderwort, Venus flytrap, sundew, etc. are the heterotrophic group of organisms. And the parasitic, that is a Cuscuta. And the plant cell have the chloroplast and cell wall that is made up of the cellulose. As a plant cell, the very important point is that they have the chloroplast and there also the cell wall is made up of the cellulose. And the kingdom Plantae that include algae, bryophytes, pteridophyte, gymnosperm and angiosperm. That is kingdom Plantae that includes algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm and angiosperm. That is kingdom Plantae that include the multicellular eukaryotic organisms, and they also contain the chlorophylls and are called as plants. But few are partially heterotrophic as well as a parasitic. And in the case of heterotrophic, they are the insectivorous plants, that is bladderwort, Venus flytrap, sundew, nepenthes, etc. And the parasitic is a Cuscuta. And the plant cells, they have the chloroplast as well as the cell wall that is made up of the cellulose. And the kingdom Plantae that includes algae, bryophyte, gymnosperm, angiosperm and pteridophyte. And the life cycle of the plants, that is life cycle of the plants have two distinct phases. Usually they have the two distinct phases, and these two phases actually alternate with each other. That is, they are not continuously in one phase, that is actually alternate with each other. There are the life cycle of the plants have two distinct phases that alternate with each other. First one, that is a diploid sporophytic phase. Here in the diploid sporophytic phase, there is a cell is actually and spores are diploid, that is two. Diplo means two actually, and the haploid means gametophyte. If a haploid gametophyte is actually N, nucleus is actually N, and the length of both the phases and whether these phases are free living or dependent on others vary among different groups in plants, and this phenomenon is known as alternation of generation. Alternate of generation, that means life cycle of plants has two distinct phases, that is diploid sporophytic phase and the haploid gametophytic phase, and these two phases are actually alternate with each other, and the length of both the phases as well as whether these phases are free living or dependent on others vary among the different groups in plants, and this phenomenon is known as alternation of generation. And here is a diagrammatic representation of the alternation generations between the, that is first in the bottom you can see that diploid sporophytic phase, and the top part is a haploid gametophytic phase. Here you can see that by mitosis, that is here two male gamete and female gamete fuses together to form a diploid cells that undergo the mitotic division and form the sporophyte, and this sporophyte undergo the meiotic reduction division and forms the haploid spores, and this haploid spores that again mitotically divides and forms the gametophytes, they are also haploid, and these haploid gametes again fuse together, each of these haploid gamete, and forms the diploid zygote. Okay. So, this is alternate with each other, that is a diploid sporophytic phase, then haploid gametophytic phase. These are alternate with each other. They are the length of each phase as well as the whether these phases are free living or dependent usually varies among the species of the plants, different groups of plants, and they are called as alternation of generation. Next is the kingdom Animalia. In the case of kingdom Animalia, here also you can see that heterotrophic, eukaryotic, multicellular organisms. These include heterotrophic, eukaryotic, multicellular organisms, and they lack cell wall. Their cell lacks cell walls. In the plants we said cell wall that contain the chloroplast as well as the cellulose, and here they lacks the cell wall, and they directly or indirectly depends on the plants for the food. Okay, these animals usually directly or indirectly depends on the plants for food, and they digest their food in an internal cavity. Their plants are usually autotrophic, some are heterotrophic or parasitic, but these kingdom Animalia or the animal groups, they are the heterotrophic. They depend directly or indirectly on the plants for their food, and they digest the food in the internal cavity, and they stored food usually as a glycogen or fat. In the form of a glycogen or the fat, this animal they store the food, and the mode of nutrition is actually holozoic, that is by the ingestion mode or ingesting. That is kingdom Animalia that include the heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms, and they are multicellular, and their cell wall lacks cells lacks the cell wall, directly or indirectly depends on the plants for their food, and they digest their food in the internal cavity, and they stored food as a glycogen or fat, and the mode of nutrition is holozoic, that is by the ingestion of the food. And they have the definite growth pattern. The growth pattern of the animals is actually a definite, and they grow into adult that have a definite shape and size. There is a definite growth pattern, that is from infant then to adult it is growing in a definite pattern, and the growth usually they grow finally into an adult that have a definite shape and size. And this animal group, they have elaborate sensory as well as the neuromotor mechanisms. They have elaborate sensory as well as the neuromotor mechanisms, and most of them exhibit the locomotion. They exhibit the movement from one place to another in search of food as well for water, energy, etc. They are moving from one place to another, that most of them exhibit the locomotion. And the sexual reproduction mainly by the copulations of the male and female are usually followed by the embryological development. That is, they have a definite growth pattern and usually grows into an adult. They have a definite shape and size and have elaborate sensory as well as the neuromotor mechanisms, exhibit the locomotion, sexual reproduction by the copulations of the male and female, and usually followed by the embryological development. And next is the viruses, and they do not find place in the classification since they are not considered truly living. You can see that viruses does not exist any place in the any kingdom of classification. It does not exist a proper place, or they are not included in the classification as they are not considered as a truly living. The viruses are actually acellular organisms, and they are having a crystalline structures outside the living cell. Only if they once they infect the living cell or the live cell or the host cell, they take up the machineries of that host cells to divide or replicate themselves by destroying the host cells, by killing that host. Okay, the viruses usually they don't have any place in the classification, why the reason is that they are not considered truly living. Viruses are usually acellular organisms and they have a characteristic crystalline structures that is usually outside the host cells, and once they infect the host cells, they uses the host cell machineries to multiply or replicate themselves and kills the host cells. And there stops the mechanism or machineries of the host cells and starts they use up these viruses use up those machineries to divide themselves and replicate themselves, because outside the cells they are inert. And viruses usually means venom or poisonous fluid. Initially it was like as a venom or the poisonous fluid. Dmitry Ivanovsky of 1892, they recognized certain microbe or certain microorganisms that are responsible for the causative agent, responsible for the disease like mosaic disease in tobacco. The causative agent should be a microbes. That is what Dmitry Ivanovsky recognized. And these are found to be smaller than the size of bacteria, as they can pass through the bacteria proof filters, that is actually 0.22 micrometer diameter usually. Okay, that is viruses, that means the venom or the poisonous fluid. Dmitry Ivanovsky of 1892 recognizes the certain microbes as a causative agents of the mosaic disease of tobacco. They are called mosaic virus. Okay, and they are usually found to be smaller than the bacteria, as they can pass through the bacteria filters, that is usually 0.22 micrometers. And M.W. Bajornik of 1898 demonstrated that the extract of this infected plant of tobacco could cause the infection in healthy plants, and named a new pathogen virus and called the fluid as Contagium vivum fluidum, that means infectious living fluid. That is M.W. Bajornik of 1898. He demonstrated that the extract that he collected from the infected tobacco plant, okay, that extract is possible or it can cause infection in the healthy plants, and named the pathogen as viruses, and the fluid that can cause the infections are called Contagium vivum fluidum or the infectious living fluid, because that fluid itself can cause the diseases to the other healthy plants also. Okay, that is called Contagium vivum fluidum. And W.M. Stanley of 1935 showed that the viruses could be crystallized, and crystals consist of proteins. These viruses that is possible to crystallize, and these crystals that consist of proteins, and they are usually inert outside the specific host cells. They are non-living outside the host cells, and they are live only inside the host cells or the live tissue. And they are obligate parasite, and their size is usually 20 nanometer to 0.36 micrometer. Okay, and definition of this virus, they are obligate intracellular parasite. Viruses are the obligate intracellular parasite. Virus also contains genetic materials that may be either RNA or DNA. And a virus is a nucleoprotein, and the genetic materials are infectious. Then Dmitry Ivanovsky, W.M. Bajornik, they all identified the infectious agents as virus. Okay, Dmitry Ivanovsky found that there is some live organism pathogen, that is a microorganisms that is responsible for the causative agent of the tobacco, that is mosaic disease in the tobacco, that is mosaic viruses, that is usually smaller than the size of bacteria, as it can pass through the filters, bacterial filters. And Bajornik, he also found out that the extract from the this infected plant, tobacco plant, is collected and is tested with the healthy plants. This fluid can could be able to cause the disease in the healthy plants, and that fluid is called as Contagium vivum fluidum, that is infectious living fluid. And W.M. Stanley, he showed that these viruses could be crystallized, and the crystals that consist of proteins. And these viruses are usually inert outside the host cell, and they are obligate parasite, and the size is about 20 nanometer to 0.36 micrometers. Viruses are the obligate intracellular parasite, and the genetic material may be either DNA or RNA, that's single stranded or double stranded. And virus is a nucleoprotein and the genetic materials are infectious. Plant viruses are usually single stranded RNA viruses, and animal viruses are either single stranded RNA or DNA or double stranded RNA or DNA virus. That is single stranded or double stranded RNA or DNA viruses, animal viruses, and plant viruses are single stranded RNA virus. And next is a bacteriophage. Bacteriophage is nothing but an organism that eats a bacterium. Okay, the definition: viruses that infect and replicate within the bacterium are called phage or bacteriophage or bacterial viruses. What is called a bacterial virus or bacteriophage or the phage? Simply phage. That is virus that infect the bacteria and replicate within this bacteria are called as a phage or bacteriophage or bacterial viruses. And the term actually derived from the bacteria as well as a Greek word that is phage, meaning to devour. That means to devour means to destroy something completely. That is what we say, once it infected and host cells, it uses the machinery and replicate themselves and kills the host. That is destroy completely that host cells. Bacteriophage that contains both a DNA or RNA as a nucleic acid in their genome. They are found everywhere, which are said to be omnipresent. So bacteriophage is nothing, the organisms that eat the bacteria. Viruses that infect and replicate within the bacteria are called as a phage or bacteriophage or the bacteria viruses. And the term is derived from the bacteria and the Greek word phage, that means to devour, to destroy something completely. And the phage usually contains RNA or DNA as a nucleic acid in the genome, and they are found everywhere and are known as omnipresent. And the structure of the bacteriophage: a typical bacteriophage is comprising of head, a short collar, and a helical shaped tail. That is bacteriophage. A typical bacteriophage comprises of the head, a short collar or the short neck, and a helical shaped tail. Bacteriophage is made up of a protein coat that is known as a capsid that encapsulates the DNA or RNA genome, that is single stranded or double stranded DNA or RNA, and head-like structure which is polyhedron in shape. And the bacteriophages may be enveloped or non-enveloped. That is a typical bacterial structure consisting of the head, a short collar, and a helical shaped tail. And the bacteriophage is made up of a protein coat known as capsid that encapsulates the DNA or RNA genome, that is single stranded or double stranded RNA or DNA. Head-like structures which is a polyhedral in shape. Bacteriophages may be enveloped or non-enveloped. And the capsid of the bacteriophage is made up of small subunits called a capsomere, that is about 20 capsomere, and that protects the nucleus. That is capsid is bacteriophage, that is the outer protein coat is called a capsid, and capsid of this bacteriophage is made up of smaller subunits called a capsomeres, that is about 2000 capsomeres, and that protects the nucleus. And the tail of bacteriophage may be long or short, look like a hollow tube in its interior side, and is surrounded by the contractile and non-contractile sheet which is about 24 annual rings. That is, tail of the bacteriophage may be long or short, looks like a hollow tube in its interior, and is surrounded by the contractile or non-contractile sheet which has about 24 annual rings. And the distal end of the tail is composed of the base plate. Distal end of the tail is composed of the base plate and which has a tail fibers at each of its corner, which helps in anchoring the virus to the bacterial cell wall. That is, tail of bacteriophages may be long or short. It looks like a hollow tube interior and is surrounded by the contractile or non-contractile sheet which has about 24 annual rings. Distal end of this tail is composed of the base plate which has the tail fibers at each of its corner, which helps in anchoring the virus to the bacterial cell wall. This is the shape of the bacteriophage, structure of the bacteriophage. You can see the head. Head contains a helical structure polyhedron structures head, and is about the DNA is the nucleic acid, and this is a collar or the neck is there. Here is a sheath, contractile or non-contractile sheath is there. This is a base plate. Base plate has a tail fiber, and at the tail fiber this is a tail fibers, and with the help of this tail fibers it is anchored onto the bacterial cell wall. Next is the viroids. In 1971, Theo Diener discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than the viruses and caused potato spindle tuber disease. It is actually smaller than the virus. That is, in 1971, Theo Diener discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than viruses and caused potato spindle tuber diseases. Viroids are small single-stranded circular RNA that are infectious pathogen that infects only plants and are called as plant pathogen. Viroids are called plant pathogen because they infect only plants. And what is called viroids? They are the small circular single-stranded RNA that are infectious pathogen that infects only the plants, hence called as a plant pathogen. It was found to be free RNA. It lacked the protein coat that are found in the virus, hence named the viroid. The difference between virus and viroid is that it was found to be free RNA because there is no protein coat that you can see in the viruses. In the viruses we saw there is a protein coat that surrounds the nucleic acid, but in the case of viroid it lacks this protein coat, that is why the RNA is found to be free. Hence the name viroid. That is a small, viroids are the small circular single-stranded RNA that are infectious pathogen that infects the plants and called a plant pathogen. It RNA found to be free as there is a lack of protein coat that are usually found in the viruses, hence named the viroid. And RNA is usually very low molecular weight. The size of this RNA is very smaller, and it is discovered by Theo Diener. From where it is discovered? That causing the potato spindle tuber diseases, and it is caused by this smaller than a virus agent that is smaller than a virus that is discovered by Theo Diener. Next is about the prions. Prions, they are actually infectious particle and they are the abnormally folded protein, okay, and they usually causes neurodegenerative diseases or neurological diseases and found to be transmitted by an agent consisting of abnormally folded protein. That is, in the modern medicine, certain infectious neurological diseases were found to be transmitted by an agent that consists of abnormally folded protein. They have abnormal folded proteins are there, and they usually causes the disease that is transmitted by this abnormal folded protein are the neurological diseases that are usually infectious, and they are called prions. These abnormally folded proteins are called as a prions, and prions causes the prions diseases known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies that are transmissible, fatal, neurodegenerative disease in humans and animals. That is, prions usually causes, prions causes prions diseases, that is not transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSEs, that are transmissible, fatal, neurodegenerative disease in humans and animals. Most notable disease caused by the prions are bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, commonly called as mad cow disease in the cattle, and its analogous variant, that is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJDs, in humans. That is, prions, they are the abnormally folded proteins that causes the infectious neurological diseases that are transmitted and are called prions, and the prions usually cause a prions disease that are known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, that are transmissible, fatal, neurodegenerative infectious disease is known mainly in the humans and animals. And the most notable disease caused by these prions are bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, are commonly called as mad cow diseases in the cattle, as well as its analogous variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease CJD in humans. And next is the lichens. Lichens are symbiotic association, that is mutually useful association that between the algae and fungi. That is lichens. Lichens are symbiotic association, that is mutually useful association that between the algae and fungi. Algal components are called as a phycobiont and fungal components are called mycobiont, which are autotrophic and heterotrophic. That is, algal components are known as phycobiont, they are autotrophic, and fungal components are called as mycobiont, they are heterotrophic. Algae prepare food for fungi, and fungi provide shelter and absorb the nutrients and minerals and water for its partner. That is, algae, they are the producer, they are preparing food, that is called autotrophic. They prepare food for fungi, and fungi provides shelter and absorb mineral nutrients and water for its partner. Lichens are very good pollution indicator because they do not grow in the polluted area. They are the good pollution indicator, that is, as they do not grow in the polluted area. That is, lichens, they have a symbiotic association that between the algae and fungi. Algal components are called as the phycobiont, they are usually autotrophic, and the fungal components are mycobiont, usually heterotrophic. Algae prepare food for the fungi, and the fungi provide shelters and absorb mineral water and nutrients for its partner. And the lichens are very good pollution indicator, they do not grow in the polluted area. Okay, then these are about the chapter 2, the biological classification. So, those who are watching my video first time, go through the previous videos. Okay, bye.